Okay, a little disclaimer right at the start. I'm recording this video for the third time today because the last two times I've had major problems with software and with my recording stuff. So hello everybody, this is Voodoo G, and welcome to my first video on how to make hardstyle using only free software. First things first, the DAW we're going to be using in this video is Traction Waveform Free. The main sound generation tools are going to be the sampler from Complete Control using samples from the expansion selection and Helm by Matt Teitel. First we load in an instance of Complete Control. There we select one-shots, expansion selection, drums, kicks, and we're going to load in a reasonably punchy kick. This one sounds pretty good. So next thing we do is we drop in a MIDI clip into the playlist. Double-click the MIDI clip to open the piano roll and add your rhythm. This rhythm is going to be 4 on the floor, meaning 1 note per beat. Now let's shorten the MIDI clip to its contents and enable looping. That way we don't have to draw in the rest of the MIDI notes again. We can also add the first triplet we want to have at the end of the drum pattern here. It will also repeat in the second part. Hardstyle is mostly 4 on the floor, but sometimes you add triplets to the sound in order to make it more interesting. It gives it this swingy vibe. Alright, this is our basic drum rhythm. So now let's make this kick sound like the gritty, bassy hardstyle bass drum. Now there are a bunch of ways to make a hardstyle bass drum. I'm gonna do it by using looping and harmonic distortion. So let's enable looping and select a small part of the sample that's going to repeat over and over again really fast. In order for the sound to be sustained, we're going to enable the ADSR envelope. Also make sure the polyphony of your sampler is set to 1. Keep in mind that the pitch of the note you are going to be playing is dependent on how long the looped section is. If you're having trouble getting the correct note, try adding a synth wave in the background playing the note you want and try moving it as close as possible while that note is being played. A piano should also do the trick. Okay, we've got the basic sound. Let's add an equalizer to it. For that, load in TDR Nova. Activate low pass and high pass. Set band 4 to boost notch. High pass the sound at about 10,000 Hz. Create a notch between 500 and 1000 Hz. And add 2 peaks right beside this notch. This will add a voice-like character to the sound. To change the thickness of the bands, you're using the mouse wheel to scroll up or down while you have them selected. Now let's add some movement using TDR Nova's dynamic options. Select band 2 or whatever band you use to create the notch and enable threshold and WB. Turn WB up and threshold down a little bit. There are no exact values for this, just don't overdo or underdo it. If underdo is even a word. And if it isn't, it doesn't matter. Don't underdo it anyways. Alright, we got the basic sound with a little bit of movement. Now let's completely tear it to pieces using some distortion. We're going to be using Wolf Shaper for this. Wolf Shaper is a linear wave shaping tool that is used for harmonic distortion. In our case you can imagine it like this. Our kick sound is a little sheep frolicking on a big white shire, and the wave shaper is a big bad wolf that is going to turn our little kick sheep into a big bloody mess, completely unrecognizable to what it was before. Magnificent. In case you want to learn more about big bad wolves, wave shapers, you should check out Shell Music Effects' video on distortion. I've linked to it right here in the info card. And if you can't find it there, you can find it in the video description. But for now, the only thing you need to know is that the wave shaper distorts the sound based on how you draw the line. So now that we've turned the kick into a big mess that's no longer recognizable as a kick drum, let's add a second kick. Load in complete control once again, go to one shots, expansion selection, drums, kicks, load it in. So now we're going to copy the MIDI clip from our first channel to this one. And let's make sure we make this one unique so that when we change the first one, we don't automatically change this one as well. Alright, sounds good to me. By the way, in case you're wondering, it is okay to tweak this sound during the entire production length of this project. Nothing is set in stone at this point, so I'm going to change it a bit here because I think it sounds better. A lot of sound design really is down to intuition and doing what sounds good to you. In order to shape the sound a little more, I'm changing the filter of the sampler and adding an envelope to it, and I'm also adding a little bit of distortion to it in order to make it sound a little different. Alright, let us move on to the second sample. For this we're also going to activate the ADSR envelope on this one. And here too we're going to add a wolf shaper for distortion. After all, we're making hardstyle here, so how could the drums not be distorted? But don't go too crazy with this one, just do it like this. This one's supposed to give the punch rather than be annihilated and turned into a bass. Alright, next up is reverb. We're going to add a bit of reverb to the bass part of this kick drum, and for this we're going to be using the old school reverb by Voxengo. In order to prevent the sound from getting too muddy, set the low end damping to 49.3 and the high end damping to 9800. Reduce the reverb time a little bit so it doesn't completely drown. Lastly, we're going to add an ozone imager 2, enable stereo eyes, set it to mode 1, set
widening
to about 25% and delay to about 4.8 milliseconds. Excellent! There we have a massive hardstyle kick drum. So let's make a melody for it. Alright, now we've got a little melody for our bass drum, but you might have noticed that it's a little bit weak on the low end. So let's fix that with a sub bass. We're going to make that using Helm. For this we're going to set oscillator 1 to a sine wave, disable oscillator 2, transpose oscillator 1 down 1 octave, enable the filter and turn up the drive. That way we're getting a saturated sub bass. The melody needs to follow that of the kick drum precisely, but we're not going to use any repeating notes for this one, because we don't need to. Alright, that sounds pretty good, but you might have noticed that the kick sounds a lot less punchy now. That's because the kick and the bass are competing for space, and since we are very biased, we obviously want the kick to win the battle against the bass, so we're adding a sidechain compressor to the bass so it gets pushed aside whenever the kick needs to punch. Brutal. So for the sidechain compressor we're going to be using Supercharger because it's very easy to use. Enable sidechain, turn up the compression, and at the bottom of Waveform for the sidechain source, select the track that has your punchy kick on it. In my case, the track that I called Punchy Kick. At this point I just realized that the kick still isn't sounding super punchy, so I'm adding an equalizer to it to change that. TDR Nova is really good for this because its audio spectrum shows you which part of the kick is the most punchy, and that's the part you want to boost. This, by the way, is different for every kick, but it's usually between 50 and 100 Hz. And as you can see, I also added a little bit of a high pass filter and a low pass filter to it, so the kick doesn't clash too much with the basses. Okay, we're still not completely done with the drums. Next up are the claps. These are a lot easier. Once again, open Complete Control, go to One Shots, Expansion Selection, Drums, Claps, and select one that you like. I'm going to select this one. The claps, just like the kick and the bass, are also going to play 4 on the floor. However, we're going to add some triplets at the ends to make it more interesting. Wait, is that a clean sound I'm hearing? This is hardstyle for goodness sake. So let's add more distortion. Wolf Shaper again. Also this clap sounds really thin, so let's add some reverb to widen it. Alright, only one element to go. Let's add a cymbal that's also playing 4 on the floor. Complete Control, One Shots, Expansion Selection, Drums, Cymbals. Take one that's suitably spacey. Alright, let's add an EQ to this and make it fit into the mix a bit better. And with that, everything's pretty much done. Wonderful! A hardstyle kick and some drums and a sub bass. From here on out, we can make the lead sound and the rest of the track. And this is also where I'm ending the video. In the next video, we're going to make the lead sound in Surge, and we're going to make the main melody for the song. Check out Shell if you want to know more about Distortion, and subscribe to keep up with all my latest videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.